What is up, everybody, and welcome to episode 105 of Bettin and Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I am your host, Kyle Roscoe, and finally, ladies and gentlemen, we get the green light to cover my favorite meet of the entire year, but unfortunately, it happens to be the day. However, they're shutting their doors until 2025. We are covering Keeneland closing day and their late pick 5, including 3 stakes, 2 of them graded. Welcome in, everybody. Hopefully you are all having a great day, and hopefully you will enjoy the show. As you see scrolling on the bottom side of the screen here, betting and boozing at gmail.com. Betting and boozing, but with no G's, at gmail.com. Please email me with any questions, comments, or concerns. You also see scrolling at the bottom screen right now our normal schedule. However, that is going to change as we going to absolutely smash this Breeders' Cup for you guys. Keep an eye out next week, starting out on Monday. Of course, we have Saturday Keeneland today at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please tune in to that for the final closing day, the final edition of Keeneland today for closing day and the early pick 5 there. So we'll have every single race covered for you guys on Keeneland closing day. And next week starts the absolute bombardment that is Breeders' Cup. We're going to have 2 podcasts, I believe, if not 3 per show on the HHH Racing Podcast. Bettin and Boozin's part of it. Picks and Ponies is, of course, part of it. And the new Pacific Horseplayers with Noah and Ryan is also included with that. So be on the lookout. The full schedule will be up on YouTube in shows shortly. So you guys will get to take a look at our shows coming up next week. Speaking of that, subscribe down below and hit the like button on this podcast to help out us and to not miss anything coming up for the Breeders' Cup next week. Not only does it show us you guys enjoy the content that we put out, but also it sends out these videos into the YouTube algorithm the more likes they get to hopefully bring like-minded horse players like yourself to the HHH Racing Podcast. And of course, for that, we thank you guys. Of course, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchors, where you can also find every single episode posted to the HHH Racing Podcast YouTube channel in audio form. Please go rate, review, and subscribe over there. Again, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. I started up a new TikTok and Instagram for Bettin and Boozin at Bettin and Boozin Podcast. So if you guys have TikTok or Instagram, I just post schedules for the upcoming week for us. Also, highlights from the previous podcast. Last Keeneland today, Charlie gave out 2 best bets, and both of them hit at plus 850 or better. And I kind of edited a little bit and put it up on TikTok and Instagram. So if you guys didn't check that out, please do at Bettin and Boozin Podcast. One thing I want to talk about before we bring on Charlie a lot is the Breeders' Cup Power Picks tip sheet, guys, is available. So please go to hhhracingpodcast.com and I'll let you take a look along with me. So if you type hhhracingpodcast.com into the bar, this is what will come up, and you'll see at the top here a blue banner and bright white lettering. Click here to subscribe to the Breeders' Cup Power Picks tip sheet. If you click that, it takes you right to here. The World Championships are here. And if you keep scrolling down, you'll see what's included, what are the options for the subscription, what's the process to pay, and the deadline to subscribe. I'll take you guys through it real quick. The Breeders' Cup Power Picks, approximately 30 pages of analysis, everybody, which is unbelievable for the price that this is. Top 3 picks for each Breeders' Cup race from every single host associated with the HHH Racing Podcast. Howard, Pete, Paul, myself, Charlie, Patrick, Noah, Ryan. Top 3 from every single co-host. Best bets, top long shots, ABC grids for each Breeders' Cup race, full analysis and write-ups for each Breeders' Cup race, along with price, spot, vertical, and horizontal plays for each Breeders' Cup race. All of that information is included with that subscription for both Friday and Saturday, ladies and gentlemen. It is the process to subscribe and pay. It's done just while our normal power picks are done. Pay our normal, as in the Saratoga, Del Mar, and Keeneland power picks. So if you already subscribed to those, you know the process. PayPal and Venmo. You'll send it directly to Howard, and Howard will email you both for Friday and Saturday directly to your email. So please, if you guys are interested, PayPal hkravitzhorse@gmail.com or Venmo at Howard-Kravitz. That's Kravets for my audio listeners out there through Venmo. And you have until Wednesday this is actually, subscriptions will be available. They'll be ending next Wednesday, October 30th, because obviously we have to fly out to Del Mar. Wednesday, October 30th at 11:59 a.m. Eastern Standard Time is the last chance to get the Power Picks. So please don't wait. Please go subscribe now. And again, guys, how much does it cost? If you're already a current Power Pick subscriber, it's only $30. That's $1 a page for this information, ladies and gentlemen. That's unbelievable price. I've seen 50, 100, 250 and upwards for this type of info, and you're getting it for only $30 or $35 if you're not a current Power Picks subscriber, which those Power Picks, by the way, $2.12 ROI all time through 707 picks since February of 2021, only $4 a weekend for the normal Power Picks, but that's done through Patreon. So if you guys are interested in those, you can subscribe to both and get these Breeders' Cup Power Picks for only $30, a $5 decrease if you are not a Power Pick subscriber, which is basically a weekend of the normal Power Picks. So please go subscribe, patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast for those, HHHRacingPodcast.com for the Breeders' Cup Power Picks tip sheet. Last thing, guys, of course, I already mentioned it, but our website has fantastic info. You can see an edition, previous editions of the Power Picks before you buy them. Fantastic resource to use. So please go check that out, HHHRacingPodcast.com. Again, bringing on my co-host right now, and we'll get right into the handicapping for you guys, as this is another fantastic card. Just really sad that, of course, it has to go away, as Keeneland does. It seems like just when it gets there, it leaves. So let's bring him on right now. It's the guy you know and love, Mr. South Beach himself, Charlie Freeman. Charlie, we're apparently riding a high because you're just absolutely smashing bets over and over, it seems like.
Yeah, now I got a lot of pressure on me. I got to call up because of it after how good my performance is. I'll be writing the Power Picks for Keeneland for tomorrow, so got to finish that up. And then, yeah, obviously covering this card with you today. Some very good opportunities, I think, betting-wise in this card and Fridays as well. So this is a great closing weekend. And all while that's going on, got to balance, school, Breeders' Cup, and then, of course, basketball season as the Spurs and my boy Chris Paul are actually having their game just tipped off. So a lot going on right now.
What do they call it? The sports equinox, I think is what they call it. We had baseball, basketball, football, and hockey all playing, and now you got Breeders' Cup and horse racing. What a time to be alive if you're a sports fan, ladies and gentlemen. But guys, let's bring on some of your comments, and then we'll get right into the handicapping. Katie, of course, was here bright and early, but she likes Lady Victoria, in which, if you didn't watch the show today, after you watch our Bettin and Boozin show for Keeneland closing day, please go check out Picks and Ponies, as they had an interview with the champion trainer Aiden O'Brien on the horses that he's bringing over here for the Breeders' Cup. Fantastic information straight from the source, the legendary trainer Aiden O'Brien, live on the HHH, or sorry, not live, taped, but still, the video is now live on the HHH Racing Podcast YouTube channel. So please go check that out after you watch this live stream. Matt Miller, of course, says hi, Emma. So, Emma, if you're listening to me on the other side of this wall, Matt Miller says hi to you. Tom Espinoza, of course, is here. Good afternoon, Tom. Come on, it's 6:40 p.m. out here in the Central Standard Time Zone. But, of course, being from the West Coast, it is still afternoon. So, Tom, good. Thank you to you, my friend. And Paul Conlon, of course, is here. See you at opening weekend at Keeneland Spring. Look, man, you know me. At least one weekend for sure. Got to get out to Keeneland. Maybe it will be opening day, considering that's Bluegrass Day, and I've never been to Bluegrass Day. So would love to, Paul. Hope to see you out there as well. Howard says, hello, everyone. Have a short break for parent-teacher conferences at my school right now. Just saying hello. Hope you enjoyed that Aiden interview, which I just talked about. Good luck at Keeneland Saturday. Davey Lane's show talking about those Euros is dropping tomorrow. Again, one of the best shows that we do for both Derby, but mainly for the Breeders' Cup, as all these Euros ship over here. Fantastic show. Don't miss that tomorrow. And don't forget to watch that Aiden show after this one. Guys, let's get right into the handicapping here. The late pick 5 for Keeneland closing day starts in race number 6, and it starts with a pretty tough Bowman Mill Stakes, going 6 furlongs for $200,000 for 2-year-olds. Field of 7, including 2 Wesley Wards, a Brad Cox, but those are none of the favorites. The number 4, Macho Music, Charlie, which I feel like we just talked about this horse a couple weeks ago when we covered Gulfstream. But Luis Saez, Rohan Crichton takes is the trainer, 2-1 on the morning line, might even drop below that, but of course we'll talk about that in a second. The number 3, Middy's Gritty, as your second choice for Florent Giroux, Brad Cox at 7-2. Third choice being the number 1, Tough Catch, Tyler Gaffleone and Dallas Stewart. Charlie, I'll bring up our picks right now, my friend, and you'll see both of us are going with the morning line favorite in here, Macho Music. It looks really tough in this spot, and he's very, very fast out of the gate.
Yeah, and this is one that I really, really liked last time out, and it's interesting. I remember you and I were kind of talking about it. With my Mr. South Beach, I kind of like to carry that to other tracks with my knowledge of these Gulfstream horses, and Gulfstream horses have been really struggling at in Keeneland and New York. Really, once they leave Florida, they just haven't worked. So I've been very careful in picking my spots with them, and this was one where I just thought that effort second time out. I get that it was a state maiden special weight at for only 45,000. But I thought that effort just looked so professional, and it clearly translated because as you can see, I know Keeneland has been playing more favoring towards speed on the dirt. But they were flying. I mean, the red numbers are accurate. When I was watching it live, all I remember wondering as someone who had Macho Music was just, can he keep it up at the rate that they're going at? And he was able to. The works that he had going into that race show that he was in form. I don't mind the turnaround because why would you not want to capitalize on that form? I think this can be an interesting race. I will be honest. One of my concerns is both of these Wesley Ward horses are entered for the card that I aforementioned talked about that I'm writing the power picks for on Friday. And I do think that race might be an easier spot. So I am curious if one or both of them end up scratching out into that race, or if one of them stays and one of them goes, because this one also has a ton of early speed. But yeah, I think Macho Music is probably the one to beat.
And you can see they're actually both entered in the same exact race for tomorrow, as you mentioned. So keep an eye on which one runs tomorrow. I'm actually interested in one of them, but Macho Music should be tough. I showed the time for him. He shows to be out in front. He's very, very fast early, has been clearing fields in the last two. Wasn't back too heavily at Keeneland, as you mentioned, Charlie. The Gulfstream runners had a little bit of trouble, but absolutely blew the doors off that field, ran them off their feet. Now comes back into this spot, gets Luis Saez back aboard, and if he does get clear, which it looks like he might again, and again, you talk about that optional claimer, which is a good purse. Now, 3 weeks later, after the opening weekend, you're running closing day. So it's not necessarily the quickest turnaround, definitely a quicker turnaround than he has, but he ran 21 days apart at Gulfstream from both of those maidens, and he crushed the field by 9.5. So this is something that Crichton's done with this horse in the past and has run completely well. Obviously, I know a state-bred maiden at Gulfstream versus the Bowman Mill at Keeneland is two very different monsters, but still just nice to see that this horse has done it before and that Crichton has the confidence to bring this horse back decently quickly without even any works, by the way. But this, like you said, this form is very, very good. I like Long Neck Paula in here, Charlie, just for the fact that this horse is drawn outside. I like that this horse, if this horse gets a kind of stalking trip like she did last time in the Prairie Meadows debutante, kind of just sitting like that length right off and able to just power away. Again, different little bit of monster here, different types of horses than you saw down at Prairie Meadows. So if this one goes in this spot, I like it just from a stalking kind of pressing trip kind of perspective. I think this one can hold in for second. Definitely like this one more than the number 7, White Sands. But again, interesting, the Wesley Ward man doesn't have him anywhere, but you do have the number 3, Middy's Gritty, who I have in third, you have in second. This horse absolutely whiffed the break last time and what just absolutely closed with a fury. Horses have been having a little bit of trouble coming from the back, as you mentioned, but hopefully there's some pace in there if you do like this. Hopefully the pace does develop if you like this horse on top.
Yeah, and I just thought the horse didn't really have the best start to the race, so I don't think he has to be quite as deep of a closer as he was last time.
Yep.
But I think the setup is certainly there. I mean, when you look throughout the field, you don't really see another horse besides the 5 horse, I would argue, and politically correct, just because the horse is handled going further, that would really show any interest in going off or from coming off the pace and closing. So I think there's certainly enough pace. As you mentioned, I think my only concern is with how the track has played and also just with, quite honestly, how fast Macho Music is. I just don't think Middy's Gritty can quite get there. I think the horse might also want a little more distance. I think if this was 6.5, I think you could argue the 3 could be the horse to beat, or even 7. But I think this one can close up. And I want to briefly touch on the wards because
Go
I
for it.
know that I haven't really been showing them love at all. I agree with you completely on White Sands. That's a complete play against me. The reason I didn't have Long Neck Paula there is I actually love this horse on Friday. The horse is actually more of a price, surprisingly, in a weaker field, in my opinion. So selfishly, the reason I didn't put this horse in my top three when I originally wanted to was multitasking through handicapping both cards. I'm really, really hoping she scratches out of this race and runs tomorrow because I really like her at a price. But I think what you said is a very good point. I think, unlike the other ward, I think she can sit. I don't think that's a problem. I think she's also just run against much better, especially look at that Saratoga race, run against Sherbini, run against the Queen's
Yep.
MG, is run against much tougher. And I think could stalk. I just think, some of these other speed horses are a little tough. And then I'll quickly go into politically correct. I think this one's a bit of a wild card because obviously one on debut, then won really impressively second
Yeah.
time out at 6 furlongs at a fast pace, and then tried to run against, three echoes and beat that horse and lost to Owen Almighty, who's a really nice horse that, ran tough against Jonathan's Way. So clearly, has been and yeah was in the Iroquois, so ran against some much tougher horses than these. I think the ultimate question though is just kind of what trip does politically correct get? How close does he sit in a race with so much speed for a horse that probably wants more distance? I just think with how well the horse ran stretching out to 7, it's a little interesting they're cutting this one back. But is another one that could certainly take advantage of a hot pace.
I mean, right. His best race was at 6. And Chris Davis, by the way, Arlington legend Chris Davis, what a meet he's been having at Keeneland. He's a smaller barn. He only ran 8 horses, but he's 7 for 8 in the money with 3 wins. And for a smaller barn, that's a hell of a meet for Chris Davis. Obviously, running this one back in here. This is one I talked to him about actually at the Derby, Charlie. This was one that he was schooling in the paddock that day. And he's like, yeah, this one's got a lot of talent. Then ended up winning on debut. And that Bushford Manor, yeah, just again, way far back, did show the ability to rate, although they went 21-2 to that opening quarter. So I do like this horse at 6, and I do like the fact that this horse could get a stalking trip if the pace heats up. But I did want to throw Long Neck Paula in there at a price just for the fact of that trip standpoint. But I completely respect your opinion with the number 5, politically correct. In the Bowman Mill, I'm going 4-6-3. Charlie's going 4-3-5. Guys, let's move on to race number 7, which is a very, very nice allowance going a mile on the turf, 120,000 N2X. Real quick, guys. Ryan, what's going on, my friend? Thanks a lot. Appreciate you joining the show. And Tom, that's a funny comment. I'm pointing it up. Howard's parent-teacher conference. If Johnny works hard, he could clunk up with a C. Yeah, starting with an F now, he could clunk up in there for third. Get a nice middle of the road C. I like that, Tom. That's actually pretty hilarious. But either way, guys, let's move on. Race number 7, Fuel Field of 12, as you'd imagine in these allowance races. No surprise there with a pretty heavy favorite, though. The number 11, the wards are in full swing, ladies and gentlemen. Number 11, Kehoe Beach. Frankie Dettori with Wesley Ward at 9-5. Second choice, number 3, Neon Beach for Christian Torres and Steve Asmussen. Third choice, number 4, just to the outside of her, Bell of Rights, Louis Saez and Shug McGahee. And for once, Charlie, we're actually seems like we're a little bit different in this race for once in our lives. You are going with the number 11, Kehoe Beach. I went with the number 4, Bell of Rights, who you don't have anywhere, and I have the number 3, Neon Beach in second, who you're a little bit interested in as well. Charlie, I'll always let you go first. Number 11, Kehoe Beach. The thing that I don't like about this horse, Charlie, I'm sure you can touch on it. Post position, a little tough to come out from the 11 hole in a mile race at Keeneland, especially if you want to be towards the front.
Yeah, no, I don't entirely disagree. I think the main thing though for me is I just think Kehoe Beach overwhelms this field. I mean, again, as someone who's known as the Wesley War guy, quote unquote, I really haven't been picking his horses that often. And honestly, for his standards, he hasn't had an amazing meet. But when you look at it, he also really hasn't sent as many horses as he normally does, and I don't think he's been sending his best, and is still winning at 22% and has had a decent amount of the money. So it's not like he's having an awful meet. It's just the bar is so high for him.
Yeah.
But I just think, again, looking around this field, looking at the other options, like the horse ran really well at Ellis Park, losing to Hello Hollywood, who's a nice horse. Was running I know obviously this was on the dirt, but running against Money's Gold Roswell, some other tough horses, and then just destroyed that field at Kentucky Downs last time out. I just really don't see another horse in this field that really competes the rest of them. I mean, I know we don't do ABC grids on this show, but for me, if I were to do so, this was a very clear-cut load A. I think this one is a deserved favorite. I understand the horse is also cross-entered, but I
Yep.
believe that the horse, and I believe in the other race, she's like the fourth or fifth on the AE list, so she's probably not getting in there and will be running here most likely. And yeah, I think if she even runs, a B or B plus effort, I think that's good enough in this spot. I really think she's. I think this is a horse I would single in some sort of horizontals.
So Charlie, I completely respect it. Like, and the fact that you like this horse is making me perk up a little bit. There's two reasons why I don't like this horse in this spot specifically. One is the post position. The fact that there's a lot of other horses that want the lead in this race too. Timeform has this as a very hot pace. They have the 3 Neon Beach up close and the 10 just to her outside, inside Maxi Superfly. That's really what I don't like is the fact that the horse right next to her is going to want the lead as well, which just continues to make her even more wide unless she can clear. But Maxi Superfly should only have one way to go, and that's to go. So I don't like the post. The other thing, Charlie, is that she's not really above this field except for the one race at Kentucky Downs. And we all know the trials and tribulations of Kentucky Downs. One big number at Kentucky Downs just being, I mean, she could have loved the track that day. Now comes back to that tight turn, the tight turn oval, and might have a tougher time with it running back, maybe to the high 70s, low 80s. And that doesn't put her above this field at all. But the thing that does make me question that angle though is that she had some time off from July to September. Wesley picked her spot very well that day, and she ran absolutely off the screen. But again, big number of Kentucky Downs mixed with the post position. I completely respect her. I have her in third, but on the win end, especially with the way that the track's been playing at Keeneland as well on the turf, it's been definitely catering to the closing trip rather than the speed trip. Just all those things combined makes me want to play against a horse like this at 9-5. I actually went with a horse again. You don't have anywhere. The number 4, Bell of Rights. This is a horse that's ran at Delaware and then ran at Colonial in the Virginia Oaks against horses like Style Points and Deep Satin. Deep Satin's a very nice horse for Cherie DeVoe, and Style Points got Joel Rosario last time at Aqueduct, so that we talked about that day. Don't even get me started on that. However, again, cold pace in that one. They went 48-1, 112-2, 135-3 to the mile. It's just, especially from the 3/4 to the mile, they ended up actually slowing down around the turn. But Bell of Rights, this is a much easier spot, I think, than especially what she ran at last time. Because if you put Style Points in this race, Style Points is probably your something to 5 morning line favorite, mixed with the fact that this horse has been closing up in every single race but that last one, and that last one was denoted by those blue numbers. So if that does get, if Bell of Rights gets the hot pace that I envision along with Timeform envisioning, I think Bell of Rights is going to be at least a little bit of an overlay based on the numbers she's run, the high 70s, low 80s, which completely mixes with this field, and the trip that should play very well at a track like Keeneland. So Bell of Rights is a horse I'm very interested in. However, Neon Beach to the inside, I have in second, you have in third, Charlie. This horse has only had 2 turf starts in her whole career. Actually, 3. You can see one back at the main, but recently 2 starts, one on the Penn National Oaks Day and Penn Derby Day that we covered on this show. And she ran really well, but poolside was slim, took them completely around wire to wire. Then the last time at Indy was on, I believe it was Indiana Derby Day. She ran well, just didn't really have that closing punch, but ran an 86 that day based on the buyer scale. You put her in this race, she makes a whole ton of sense from a stalking trip perspective. If she's going to sit like a pocket trip or a 4th or 5th trip, I really like Neon Beach in this spot. Steve's had a little bit of a troubled meet, 1 for 29, only 7 for 29 in the money. However, this I feel like is a good chance to be able to sit a really nice trip, Charlie, and get Steve a little bit over the hump. I mean, these, especially when a guy like Steve Asmussen's 1 for 29. It's Steve Asmussen. That doesn't really mean too much to me because there's always Steve can always turn it on whenever he wants, basically.
Yeah, he has the quality of the horses. It feels like it's more of a matter of when, not if. I think the one thing that's really interesting about Neon Beach, like you were saying, is despite 2 borderline, but a buyer top and almost second best buyer on the turf, the horse, we've barely, and being out of Omaha Beach with Warfront, you would expect this horse to want turf, and we've barely gotten to see it. I just thought that those two efforts were impressive, and this one has a lot of opportunity to step forward. And also, what I liked is that Asmussen had the confidence that, after a race way back in, a maiden special weight 2023, that every time he's thrown her on the turf, it's been in, a stakes level big time
Yep.
race. It's not like he's just throwing her into some optional claiming 80,000 or something where he's just trying to, get her going. He has enough faith in her on the turf to put her in these kind of spots. The only concern I had with this one is I just feel like visually when I watch her, she gets really good trips and has every right to go by and just doesn't
Yep.
have a closing kick. So it's kind of having to balance the good and the bad, and that she won't be too far forward and use too much energy. But I will say maybe part of it is also that the turf in Indiana was only good, so maybe that was part of it. But that we haven't gotten to see her have that, sort of devastating kick. Moving into the two, and then there is one other thing I wanted to touch on in the ward. But so this was the reason I didn't use your fours. I wanted to have one deep closer. I didn't want to have two, and I went with Mrs. Actor. I just thought she was super interesting because they ended up stretching her all the way out to 1.5 miles and ran against Chop Chop, who, again, I know is a different type of horse, not this kind of distance, but, is a monster in the horse's own right. But, ran against Moving On Up, ran at, in New York and ran a very nice second in a hot pace. I just think this is one. I get the figures aren't amazing and don't jump at you, but I feel like it's just been running very consistently solid races. Other than that 1.125 at Churchill Downs, it's just consistently been running the high 70s and low 80s. And I think she's one that's just primed for that next step forward. Again, my only slight concern is I just don't quite know if she'll get there in time compared to the Ward. But for me, if you are trying to beat the 11, this is the horse I would personally use just because it's a complete opposite style approach. And I think she is a very solid horse just waiting for that big step forward. And then the only other pushback I wanted to have on the Ward for you.
Real quick, Charlie, I want to say something real quick before you go into the Ward. The only thing, I don't know if this horse is even going to run, just because I did like this horse a lot as well. Problem is, this horse ran in the Dowager. The Dowager was last Saturday. I mean, she's coming. That'll be 7 days. I mean, she could definitely run. Just that last time, based with never really can get going except in that hot pace. She's going to get it, but yeah, I don't know. Keep an eye on if Mrs. Astor runs, I guess is what I'm saying, because she did run 7. I mean, she ran 4 days ago from this point. So keep an eye on her. But anyway, Charlie, sorry, one more thing on Kehoe Beach.
No, you're all good. And yeah, I will say if she does scratch, I would move your 4 into third. The only other thing I want to bring about the Ward as a pushback is this is also a horse that we've only gotten to see twice on the turf. So that's the other reason why I really like the big buyer jump is I don't think it is entirely the Kentucky Downs. I think a lot of it is this is another Omaha Beach Warfront horse, with Ireland sign on the dam side that just screamed turf that Wesley finally gets to the turf, and we've only gotten to see twice. So I think you could argue that this is one that, is a whole different horse on the turf and that she's just going to keep getting better.
Yeah, that's a completely fair point. Just like I said, all those different types of factors why I'm playing against her, but again, completely understand why, and I respect her. I have her in third. I'm going 4-3-11. Charlie's going 11-2-3 in a really nice allowance race in the second leg of the late pick 5. Charlie, let's move on to the big races. This is arguably the feature on the card. It's the grade 2 Hagyard Fayette Stakes, going 1.125 miles for 3-year-olds and up for $350,000. So also shout out Matt Gum, my friend. Matt, can't wait to see you, man, in a week and a half. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic time out at Del Mar. So please let's get it going. But like I said, the grade 2 Fayette Stakes going 1.125 miles, and I'll show the Equibase right now, guys. It's a field of 10, headed again by a pretty nice morning line favorite, the number 8 Hit Show, Florent Giroux, Brad Cox, 2-1. Second choice, the number 6 Rattle and Roll, Brian Hernandez, Kenny McPeak at 4-1. And third choice is shared between the number 7 Heroic Move and the number 2 Tumbarumba, the grit grinder who always continuously runs his best race. I'm going with Rattle and Roll. Charlie, you're going with Hit Show, and I get it. I was honestly ahead Hit Show the entire time. I wanted to go with a little bit more of a price, but completely understand why you have Hit Show on top. Makes an absolute ton of sense after some very good wins so far this year.
Yeah, and again, I just think with the way the dirt's played, I think with the trip, I think he could just honestly get a trip just like last time and have a dream ride. I will say vertically, I wouldn't touch this horse in a million years. I think this race is wide open. I think it's a fantastic betting race, and there's lots of opportunities. I love Katie's top pick. I did not have the stones to do it because I don't know if you remember, but the 9 Grand Aspen is a horse I have absolutely loved for the longest time. And my only concern was, not even just the layoff, but the trainer switch made me a little concerned because I thought this one had been running so well and really turned it around after going from Cox to Pletcher. So I just don't know or love the trainer switch, but I think that one is. But yeah, with Hit Show, Horse has been in terrific form. These last two efforts have really shown that he's gotten back into that form that we were seeing, in 2023 on the Derby Trail, and to not let that disappointing effort at Prairie Meadows make you think that was the norm. I think we've seen a lot from him, and he's getting back to where he is. I think horizontally, I think you could argue there's about 4 or 5 different horses that can win this race, and this is more of a horse I would want to use defensively and try to beat. But at the same time, if I'm just being unbiased and just putting objectively who I think the most likely winner is, both from a setup and ability, it's hard not to put Hit Show on top in a spot like this.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. My pick honestly might be the dumbest pick I've ever made on the show if it does go sour, or it could be one of the best. Yeah, no one knows, but Hit Show makes a whole ton of sense, Charlie, from a trip perspective, from a really getting back into form perspective. Last time in the Lucas Classic at Churchill, everything points on go for this horse that Brad Cox has. And Brad Cox has won 12 of 31 this meet at almost 40%, which is absolutely ridiculous, and this horse is still working as good as can be. So Hit Show, ton of sense, completely
And
respect. Probably should have. What?
And get your favorite jockey aboard.
Don't. You saw, dude, that meme was,
yes,
I'm so happy with that meme that it came out earlier. I was so happy with it. Either way, Charlie, like I said, makes a whole ton of sense. This might be the dumbest pick I've ever made. But Rattle and Roll ran the Lucas Classic on September 30th of 2023. Didn't come back until the 2024 edition of the Lucas Classic on September 28th of 2024. After a year layoff, still runs very well, did get a hot pace into it. However, runs a decent third behind Hit Show and Cook Creek. I understand the dirt hasn't been playing to this type of strength. However, last year, during the middle of the year, he was very, very good. Winning the Pimlico Special, winning the Ben Ali, winning the Blame, almost winning the Stephen Foster at Ellis last year. Now comes back to a track at Keeneland that he's done super well in the past. He won the Jockey Club Gold Cup. I believe, was it last year? Or was it? It was one of the. It was one of the Breeders' Futurity is what I'm thinking of. Sorry, everybody. The Breeders' Futurity he won, going on this Keeneland track. Now comes back to the track that he loves. 2 for 4 at Keeneland. McPeak hasn't had the best meet. Neither has Brian Hernandez Jr. However, the pace looks to be at least a little bit. They have the 2 and the 9. Tumbarumba's going to go out there. And granted, Aspen, the horse you mentioned earlier, Charlie, is going to be there as well. He hopefully should be able to sit a little bit closer. He has done it in the past. Just trying to go a little bit off the board away from Hit Show. Again, could be dumb, but I think he makes a whole ton of sense to take second off the layoff at what should be a pretty decent middling price. I have Hit Show in second. Charlie, you have the number 4 War Campaign in second, and then you can touch on anything more you want with Grand Aspen, and then we'll continue. We'll continue on.
Yeah, briefly with Rattle and Roll, because I know the chat loves the horse too. I completely hear what you're saying. I like the horse second time off the layoff as well. I think my big concern here is I personally don't see any speed in this race. I see War Campaign being towards the front. I see Hit Show being towards the front. I see Grand Aspen being towards the front. I see Tumbarumba, honestly, is the one on the lead. And I don't think it's because they're all trying to go. I think it's because they're all, stalkers. But in a race like this, they happen to be the speed of the race. And that's what worries me. In a track that, me, I'm biased towards the closers to a fault where it hurts me. I just see a race where the track is playing towards speed and there isn't much on paper. Now, granted, we say that and then these races end up melting down and I look like an idiot. But yeah, when I was saying I think I would go 5 deep here, Rattle and Roll is still one of the ones I would use. But going into War Campaign, again, I just think this is one, especially at that price. I like that Tyler G's back aboard. Has been running really consistently, honestly, other than in the race where the horse ran against Highland Falls and Cagliostro and Dreamlike, which are just some tough horses to try to compete against. But the reality is this one's been consistently running in the 90s, always gets a great trip, always sits, within a couple lengths. And I think in a race where there is no pace, I expect War Campaign to sit right off of Tumbarumba. And I wouldn't be surprised to see this one end up winning. I just think the trip sets up nicely. I think Tyler G will get this one in a great ground-saving trip towards the front without having to work too hard or go too fast, and is one that has been able to sit right behind hot paces and still stay on. So now I think in a race where there won't be as hot of a pace, I think War Campaign makes a ton of sense. And then, Tomb Broom we already talked about, but that's the fifth horse I was talking about that I would hint at it as a shot, just because the lack of speed. And as you touched on, this horse is, even though I hate this horse because of what this horse did to me with Castle Chaos, this horse is game as could be if I'm just being objective. And you see the figures are just ridiculous. I mean, every race is a mid-90. You know what you're going to get no matter what.
Yep.
Yeah, the horse hasn't been in the winner's circle a ton, other than against me. The horse is getting second every time. But you know this one's going to run, run his heart out. But going into Grand Aspen, I love that Katie had it in her to put this horse on top. I wanted to put Grand Aspen on top so badly. My hesitation, again, is the layoff and the trainer switch. But the horse is a steady work tab, looked incredibly impressive to me in that Churchill Downs win, and more importantly, in that even in the loss to O'Connor, where it was kind of a race like this, where the horse just happened to be
Racing podcast legend O'Connor, Charlie.
You're not wrong. And I look, I had that exact I also had a major ticket at Grand Aspen, so I was a little devastated to see the horse not get up. And then look, the Pegasus, it was a disaster. The horse shouldn't have been in that race. Honestly, was surprised that the horse took so much money and was like 20 or 30 something to 1 and got bet all the way down to 14 to 1 in that spot. Just didn't work out. The horse got eased. It was a disaster. I think the question is just how ready, he is off the layoff and with the trainer switch.
Yep.
I think if Grand Aspen, though, comes back to that form, and again, with the trip, this one could get Grand Aspen is one I would love vertically to try to play at a price. And it's definitely one I would mix in the horizontals to get some value.
Yeah, I didn't even look at it, to be honest with you, but let's see. Just over 180 days between starts. Jonathan Thomas, 17%, 14 for 84, though. So, let's see. Off a trainer switch, does he have anything else based on that? 2 for 19. So a little bit down with a new horse off of that long of a layoff. However, 17% is definitely nothing to sneeze at off this type of a layoff. So Grand Aspen, Charlie always plays the horses close to his heart. So got to respect him for that, always sticking with it. I'm going 6-8-2 in the Fayette. Charlie's going 8-4-9. Charlie, let's move on to the co-feature on the card, the grade 3 Bryan Station, going a mile for 3-year-olds for $600,000. So draws a full field of 12. Keeneland,
another horse of mine in this race.
Full field of 12. And you already know, baby. You already know what we're doing here. But either way, 3 also eligibles as well. Bringing up the Echo Base, the more in-line favorite is the number 11 to the outside. Trickery, Manny Franco, Graham Motion, 2-1. Second choice, the number 6, Brilliant Birdie, Brian Hernandez, Cherie DeVoe, 7-2. Your third choice is the number 9, Evade, Tyler Gaffleone, Mike Maker. Charlie, you can take a guess where I'm going in this race, but you are going with the number 11, Trickery, in this race. And for another one that burst onto the scene out of nowhere, has run some very nice races after that monster win that we all watched on Kentucky Derby Day.
Yeah, for Mr. South Beach himself, I guess I was missing something because this horse had some decent efforts at Gulfstream and then shocks everybody at 47-1. Look, I'll be honest, this is a horse that I did not believe in at all, but the thing that I have had going for me is I've been pretty spot on with when to be on her and when to be off. I thought she was a complete fade in the Penn Mile. Little did I know that he would actually run an incredible effort and just missed against one of my favorites in First World War. But then was back on the horse in the Belmont Derby, was back on the horse in the Secretariat against Brilliant Birdie, who I know was a horse I think I was the only one who won against, because I think everybody else on our show liked Brilliant Birdie. And then last time I thought the horse was interesting underneath, but I mean Johannes, who we're see in the Breeders' Cup, is just a monster. But the reality is he's been in terrific form, has honestly been getting better to me visually, especially that effort 2 back, and is one that I just think is not only just proving that was not a fluke win in the American turf, but that was actually not even the best we would see of this horse, and he would keep getting better. And so for me, this is another one I think just sets up great trips for himself. I think can sit right off the speed, work out a good trip. I'm sure you don't love the gate potentially, because I know we talked about that with other horses, but this is one that I just can't fault and I had to put on top.
You hit me between the eyes, Charlie. Gonna be honest with you. Look, this is a horse that honestly I probably never liked on top. The Belmont Derby was a little bit of an eye-opener for me because that was the first race after that American turf win, and then blew the doors off that field in the Secretariat, albeit with a perfect trip, in a cold pace to front in that race. Came back last time at Santa Anita, ran against the extremely talented Johannes, who's running in the Breeders' Cup Mile out at Del Mar. So Trickery makes a ton of sense, but you hit it, Charlie. 11 posts with a horse who likes to be forwardly placed, with horses to the inside who want to be forwardly placed. That is a telltale sign for me at Keeneland that I want to play against the favorite. Again, denoted by a fast pace. They actually have trickery in the middle, which that wouldn't be too big. That wouldn't be too bad of an outcome, honestly, for trickery. However, he likes to be a little bit closer than 5-6 lengths off of it. And if he's coming from, I don't know if he has the closing kick to come from 5-6 lengths off of it. But again, trickery makes a ton of sense. Has burned me plenty of times in the past, could burn me here. But Charlie, I love Brilliant Birdie in this race.
I wonder why.
Absolutely no, like honestly, without even Sharita Vo bias, top of the fan club, by the way. I love her in this race. I love the trip she's going to get in this race. Came back last time after that Secretariat loss to Trickery, where she was farther back. Trickery got the jump on her in that race. Comes back at Kentucky Downs in the Gunrunner Stakes, which was headed by a bunch of different horses, and never looked like a loser in that race. Was up by one by the eighth pole, and just sustained it the whole way, absolutely driving her way to the finish. Even plays longer than a mile. She gets a fantastic post in the 6, should sit just to the inside off a nice closing trip, which Keeneland has been very fond of on the turf. Not numbers, maybe not two Trickery's 98. However, that 93 in the American Derby would be that type of trip is exactly what I envisioned for her. I keep saying her. So cheers, everybody. I'm definitely not drinking a margarita out of this wine glass just because it says Keeneland on it. So cheers to everybody out there. But just trip-wise, pace-wise, I think Trickery might even be too close to that type of pace, especially being towards the outside. Brilliant Birdie, I love this horse in this race. And if I'm getting 7-2, going to be an absolute hammer job for me. Nathan Travers. Nathan, thanks so much for joining the show, man. Greatly appreciate it. New-time viewer. Give me a good horse to bet on. Right there, my friend. The number 6, Brilliant Birdie in race number 9, the Bryan Station. Absolutely love him in this.
I got a question for you,
race.
Kyle.
Please.
Up to what odds would you take on the 6 where you would put an irresponsible wager, as Noah Maher would say?
3-1. Anything below that, anything closer to Trickery than that, I wouldn't
I would say the viewers do need to know that.
3-1 or higher, I will be placing, you'll see it at the end, the best bets. I'll be placing my irresponsible wager of the weekend. We should make that a segment. You got Paul's got his rant of the week. We should start with the irresponsible wager of the week. We should start doing that. That's a great thing for a betting show to have, is an irresponsible wager of the week. Either way, let's keep going, Charlie. I have the number 8. I'll talk about real quick. Mansa Musa, Bill Mott, Luis Saez ran a very, very good quick call, just losing to Star of Mystery. Hasn't come back to run that good since, although did run well in the Franklin Sampson Stakes, just behind Howard Wolowitz, who's actually, I believe, first on the AE for the Breeders' Cup Sprint, Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, I believe. So keep an eye on that. But 8-1 on this horse was too good to pass up with the numbers that this horse has ran in the past. As simple as that. Coming from, the 5.5 turf sprint, but that 6.5 last time at Kentucky Downs generally plays like a mile. So I like that better. The fact that he closed into a hot pace last time at Kentucky Downs, which was not too conducive to it early in the meet. So Mansa Musa is one that I'm definitely looking forward to. This would be my tri-key horse. Talking about tri-keys, you key the horse in second, key the horse in third. This would be my tri-key horse in this race. But I know you also have a different one, Charlie, but everyone that knows, fan of the show, for a long time, Charlie plays his horses like he does. And this is another one of Charlie's horses. But Charlie, floor is yours, my friend. The number 7, Laganos, who you have in third.
Yeah, look, trying to go a mile and 5/16 on Kentucky Downs made 0 sense to me. I'm just going to trust that Asmussen was like, screw it, let's just see, because the purses are ridiculous there. But that race never made sense to me, so put a line through that. The reality that you have to be unbiased about Laganos is this. The horse pretty much consistently gets an incredible price, and he pretty much consistently runs an incredible race that doesn't result in a win. So what do you do with a horse that's a giant price that you know is going to run a consistently decent effort but won't win? The answer is you stop being an idiot and trying to bet the horse to win when the horse pays tremendous underneath, and you start figuring out who's actually going to win and then play this horse under those horses. And if you look at some of the horses that this one has lost to, in Brilliant Birdie, who we talked about, in Chikari, in Need, who are for me, actually, Neat was the only other one I did want to talk
Yeah.
about. I think those are the three most likely winners in this race. And Lyganos ran his heart out against all three and lost narrowly to all three of them. So I think the reality is, if you're giving me 15-1 on this horse, and with how Asmussen's, not had the best meeting, with how this one hasn't been able to get it done, you'll probably get, I would guess, at least 10 to 12-1. I would love this horse underneath. And I know we were talking about, we got a question in the chat for a good bet to place in terms of, probably more of a winner. But this is one I couldn't encourage enough to try to mix in somewhere in your exactas and more importantly in your tries. And then briefly, and I know we'll move on the one Neat.
Nope,
I think this one's really interesting at a price. I think 8-1, I think, is a bit disrespectful, and I don't think you'll get that just because this one is run against those. Obviously, did not have a good effort in the American turf despite taking a decent amount of money in that race, but then came back and won in New York, then came back and won in New York again, beating Lyganos in a race that, quite honestly, Neat had a tough trip in it and had to go wide and had no business being Lyganos in, and then ran a very respectable third against Brilliant Birdie for a horse who's, double the odds. I know you love the 6, but I think we would agree that Neat is not 2 times the odds of a horse compared to some of these other favorites. So I think this is another one that is at least worth a look. And again, when you're talking horizontals wise, is one you should be looking to include if you want a price.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think the only thing I don't like about Neat is like we talk about a lot, Charlie, right? Where we've seen, this horse is now ending its 3-year-old year. We've kind of seen what this horse can do, right? 86, 88, 86, 85, 84. It's kind of what this horse likes to run, right? That kind of mid to high 80s. And I just don't know if that's good enough to win in a spot like this. Maybe a third or fourth place finish for Neat might be the best case scenario for at least, unless he takes a gigantic step forward with that, which after running in April, May, June, August, September of this year might be hard to just absolutely explode with a buyer top. Obviously, we've seen it before, but in terms of betting this horse to win, again, unless he takes a giant step forward compared to horses like Trickery and Brilliant Birdie, I just don't see a path for this one to win or just be better, frankly, than a lot of these other horses. But Neat, again, 8-1 price, though. You're getting a very square price on a horse that has run very well at Keeneland in the past. One of my favorite interviews ever from Keeneland is Scott Hazelton, or it might have been Gabby, talking to Ray Lou, who rode him that day last year and who won by an absolute nose over Gugino, who we've talked about on the show many times. He goes, "Do you think you got there?" And then Ray against Ray, no. That's what Ray Lou said. So either way, fantastic guy. Love Ray Lou, and obviously Neat could make a ton of sense, at least underneath in this race. In the Bryan Station, I'm going 6, 8, 11. Charlie's going 11, 6, 7. Guys, let's move on to the last race. But of course, if you're enjoying the show, please go down below the video player, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button for us. We would greatly, greatly appreciate it because it, again, doesn't only show us that you guys are liking the content, but keeps you subscribed, and will push these videos out into the YouTube algorithm to bring like-minded horse players like yourself to the HHH Racing Podcast, and for you to not miss any of our fantastic Breeders' Cup shows coming up next week in lieu of the World Championships next weekend. But Charlie, let's move on to race number 10. As you hinted at, this race is absolutely effing impossible, is what it is. Race number 10 is a maiden claiming 150,000, going 6 furlongs on the dirt with a full field of 12, with the morning line favorite being the number 9, which, funny enough, the chalk for Jose Ortiz and Brett Calhoun. I actually did this without morning lines. That's actually really interesting that horse is the favorite. Number 12, Winter Creek, is your second choice. Gabe Saez comes over to ride. Phil Bauer is the trainer at 4-1. Third choice, the number 2, Tomcat Tuesday. The number 5, Thunderhawk for Saez and Peter Urton, as I'll bring up our picks right now. I'm actually going with a 10-1 horse on top, which I thought was interesting. Charlie, you're going with the number 12, Winter Creek, on top for, again, Philip Bauer and Gabe Saez. Again, just super hard to pick out of this race. But that last race for Winter Creek was at Indianapolis. Obviously, you could talk about it, but did show at least a little bit of interest all the way up until it was late.
Yeah, I mean, look, the horse was well meant. They paid $140,000 for him. He showed a lot of interest early, despite going at a really rapid pace. And again, that was also going a mile, now cutting all the way back to 6 furlongs, which I think is fantastic for this horse. Is working well. I just really like the experience. I don't love the post, but again, I like the experience. I like the work tab. And I also just like that now at this distance, rather than having to, be a full out sprint and a crazy pace, I think realistically, this one could sit a really nice stalking trip and, use that experience to the horse's advantage. I know we still have to get the best bets, so I'll just quickly talk about the 3, and then we can discuss
You're
the
good.
4 together. Outside of the 12, there weren't really any who have run before that visually, impressed me or spoke to me. I will say I agree with the chat. I thought I would have had it at 1 to 9 that you were going to put the chalk on top. I thought that horse wasn't good. I hate the name. I hate
Hey,
the
we
odds.
bet with our
There's
head, not with our heart in this show, Charlie. Just keep
well,
that in mind.
there was no world I was using that one. Burnham Square is just one that I think has been working solidly. I like the horse out of Liam's Mat. The Damn Linda was a nice horse. Had that bullet work as well at 47 and 4, and it's just had a really consistent tab. I understand, and we can talk about this with the 4 as well.
Yep.
Not the best trainer stats for the horses that you and I have thrown in for firsters, considering for the 3, the trainers at 3% on 72 starts, and then for the 4, who we both have the trainers at 3% on 77 starts. So I get it. I'll let you talk about the 4 as well, but I just thought both of them coming out of nice horses. I like the Dam side as well, and I thought they both have nice work tabs. And again, I just think in a field like this, I would, even though I think the 12 makes a ton of sense, I would really hope I could try to get a pro. But I also know with these firsters, you have to watch the board.
I mean, completely, Charlie. Keep in mind how open this race is. Neither one of us have the favorite in the top 3. Neither one of us have the third choice in the top 3. We only have the second choice. I have it in third. You obviously have it to win. Also, don't give me too much shit on the chalk. You were 4 for 4 before this race, by the way. And you're going second choice here, so I don't want to hear it from you today. But Burnham Square, Charlie, actually. We'll go to Linda, who's the dam of this horse, of course, for those that don't know, the mom of the horse. Linda was a very nice horse in her own right for Ian Wilkes, who trains this baby. You go to the siblings, Hatch, you go early in his career. I mean, he ran for a long time, but very nice, kind of allowance New York runner. But if you go to the summary here, you see 66 starts, 12 winners with an 80 buyer top. So the 3 does have some progeny winners, as well as the number 4, Stay Frosty. This is why I think like this horse a little bit better than the 3, Charlie. Court Appeal only won once at Aqueduct in the slop. However, has 14 for 64, albeit starting with the turf. Half to this horse is LZ, who, if you remember correctly, was a very, very nice horse. Chris Hartman and Bet Mitch Get Rich, Arlington legend,
Unreal.
Michigan. I was about to call Mitch Mural, super fast horse on the turf sprinting. So half to LZ now into this race. We'll see if this horse can run, but I like this horse at least underneath more than the 3, just based on breeding at 12 to 1, which is a very nice price for that type of horse. And with these races, guys, if you watching the board and watching where the money goes based on the odds is your problem is it's the last race in the late pick 5 sequence. However, if you're playing this race vertically, the money could be very telling on where you want to go. And last horse we'll talk about, Charlie's number 8, Free Country, who I have in first, who did pretty much no running last time. I won't sugarcoat it. However, they went obscenely fast. They went 21 and 1, 44 and 2, and 56 and 3. Like, just super fast, as denoted by those red figures that you see.
And the winner's the horse we covered earlier.
And that's correct. The winner was won by a horse that came from the clouds, came from Africa, came over here, basically ran from Tennessee to Churchill Downs and made it there before the horses on the lead won to the wires. So type of that where, the speed horses absolutely collapse in that race, and that's won by a horse coming from the clouds. I kind of like that as a bet back angle, because you're not really thinking that this race is going to heat up completely like that last one was. However, maybe even an easier spot. Granted, I know it's $150,000, but it's still the maiden claiming level. Windstar, Dallas Stewart, and if you go to, I believe, is it this horse as well? This horse was as half to actually a winner on a dirt route with an 88 buyer. Star in My Dreams, who was actually second, was third on this track in the Lexington, which is the last Kentucky Derby prep before getting to the Derby. Ran at the Pate Mile in the Indiana Derby. It was a very nice, well thought of horse for Dallas Stewart. And this horse is also being trained by Dallas Stewart. So the fact that this horse has had Boy Crazy, who's the dam, has had really nice progeny in her past. Tyler Gaffleone gets back aboard on this horse. Hopefully not as hot of a pace as last time, but Free Country at 10 to 1 is kind of the get out of the meat bomb, as a lot of people like to play. But I do, again, I like a couple angles in here where in a completely wide open race, Free Country could be the one to run them off their feet at 10-1. Guy, Matt, I love that comment. I won't bring it up, but I just want you to know I do love that comment. In the last race for the Keeneland Fall Meet, I'm going 8-4-12. Charlie's going 12-4-3. Charlie, moving on to best bets, my friend. You talked about them a little bit while we were talking about the races. However, you're going race number 7, an exacta 11/2-3. And if I remember correctly, that is that race with Kehoe Beach. And you're going over the horses you liked, Mrs. Astor and Neon Beach. And race number 9, King Laganos underneath in trifectas. Just reading it off for our audio viewers, audio listeners, I guess. 1-6-11 with 7 with 1-3-6-8-11 in trifectas. Again, betting the top 3 runners, but King the horse in second and King the horse in third with the same horses. 1-6-11 with 1-3-6-8-11 with 7. Charlie, floor is yours.
Yeah, and I will say again, in my first best bet, as we kind of talked about with the viewers, if the 2 does scratch, I would just change it to a best bet of the exact with the 11 over 3 and 4 for those listening. I know we talked about it earlier. But again, I think Kehoe Beach is the most likely winner in the sequence. Personally, I heard your concerns. I know as someone who doesn't like speed normally, and who, especially in longer races, it's concerning. But I think in a card where the last race is wide open, where the 2 races before that, I think you could argue there's 3 or 4 different winners. You got to take a stand somewhere, and I think race 7 is your best chance to try to take a stand if you're going to look to single a horse. So I'm going to use that one on top over some decent prices that I think I'll get. And then again with Laganos, I will say what benefits me, from being around, people like you, being around, Noah, being around Pete, Paul, obviously Howard, who loves the try.
Say, what about the boss man? This is literally the boss man bet.
Yeah, being around Matt Miller, who I know is still in the chat. When you're around these kind of people, you get to learn more and more to find different ways to use horses that you're a fan of without just, using the bias, chasing your heart thing like you would do in other sports where you just bet your team when you know they don't have a chance. And that's what I'm doing here with Laganos. I think the reality is, even if we're being unbiased, he runs solid. He has decent figures. He consistently, puts up in the money efforts. So why not stop trying to chase that 15-1 and trying to win and just be realistic here and say, look, I don't think he's quite on the level of the best, but with his style and his ability, he certainly could run somewhere in the money in second or third. And if you're able to key that horse in with any of these combinations as a horse that's going to be 15-1 morning line, and I would say at the worst 10 or 12-1 actually come race time, you could easily turn some nice money here. And again, this is me just trying to mature as a handicapper and find a more realistic and creative way to make some money on an opinion I have.
I'll take things you would think you would never hear for 5,000, Alex. Love it, Charlie. Absolutely love it. Again, even though you love to bet with your heart, like I kind of joke with you, as always, Chili Flag always comes to mind.
Yeah, Mr.
But
C.
Laganos is a horse you think, like you said, might not have a chance to win against stuff like this. But again, I would completely agree with you odds-wise. Worst 10, 12-1. Probably getting that 15-1 just based on numbers alone. I think is a perfect tri-key horse. A horse that always runs his race, just can't really put it together on the win end. And you have the 3 most likely winners on top, again, in my opinion as well, trying to find that horse in second or third to be able to get you a very nice payout. Charlie, good luck with your best bets. Again, I kind of hinted at mine already, but we'll go with mine real quick. Super sweet, the quintessential Kyle best bets, right? Is a double using a favorite, which is race number 6, Macho Music. I think that horse is just a lot faster than everybody else. Gets out in front, should be the one to win that race as long as nothing crazy happens. With the 3 and the 4 in the next race, that is the 4 that I have on top, who is for Shug McGahee, the number 4, Bell of Rights, a horse that should be closing from the back, and the number 3, Neon Beach, who Charlie and I both liked somewhere in there for Asmussen and Christian Torres, trying to get at least a little bit of a price, throwing out that favorite in there of that Charlie likes, the number 1, Kehoe Beach. So obviously one of us will be right in race number 7, hopefully, of course. But race number 9, a win on the number 6, Brilliant Birdie. Already talked about it. Putting the bias aside, of course, talk about betting with the heart that I always give crap Charlie about. Trying to put the bias aside, I think she gets a fantastic trip he gets a fantastic trip in that race. And if he continues to take the step forward that I think he can, and with trickery, with a little bit of trickery trouble to the outside with the 11 post, I really like Brilliant Birdie slotted in, should close very well on a closer-friendly Keeneland turf course and win at a nice price of 3-1. Charlie, I won't sugarcoat it. I thought that was one of our best shows, honestly. Very methodical, explaining stuff really well. And again, for what is my favorite meet of the entire year, I hate that this track is coming to an end, as it always feels like it comes and goes so quickly. But it's a really, really nice card to close out another great Keeneland meet the week, of course, before we hit it really hard at Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Been a lot of fun. I know it only ended up being us two, but I think the viewership was great. I appreciate how active the chat was, because I know that kind of helps make up for it when we don't have as many different people to interact with. But no, I like it. I think honestly the best bets, not really from you, because I think you've kind of consistently been already using, your double, like you said, your strategy. But I will say, even though I know I'm being a little biased, but I do think it is a nice way to show, how I personally feel I've grown as a handicapper and trying to find different ways to use opinions. But again, I still think with the way you've been able to educate me and our audience with the doubles, you've still gotten to use that and get that home. And also just sometimes keep it simple is the answer, where you just have a strong opinion with that 6 and playing that horse. But no, I think it went well. And I think this is a great way to, segue what, is a sad day, but at the same time happy, because now it means we can move into focusing our attention fully on Breeders' Cup. And now we prep for the busiest, but also the most rewarding and exciting week of the year.
We couldn't agree with you more, my friend. Breeders' Cup Power Picks, guys, again, still available, hhhracingpodcast.com. $30 if you're already a Power Pick subscriber. Patreon.com/hhhracingpodcast for those. However, $35 if you're not already a Power Pick subscriber. Again, close to 30 pages of information on every single Breeders' Cup race on the card, full write-ups, top 3 picks of every single co-host on the HHH Racing podcast, whatever the hell it is. Price plays, spot plays, pick 5 grids, horizontal bets, everything you need to crush your bets at Breeders' Cup. We have you covered. hhhracingpodcast.com. Go pick yours up today. But guys, that'll do it for your host, Kyle Roscoe, and for my co-host, Charlie Freeman. This has been episode 105 of Bettin and Boozin on the HHH Racing Podcast, covering Keeneland, closing day, and the late pick 5. Everybody, subscribe to not miss any Breeders' Cup stuff that we have coming up next week. It's going to be an absolute storm of Breeders' Cup information. You're not going to want to miss it. Crush those bets this weekend at Keeneland. Win those photos, everybody, and we will see you for our Breeders' Cup previews. Have a great night, everybody.